Good afternoon. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and today we're going to take a look at July climatology for Southeast Virginia. Since we're just starting a brand new month of July, we're going to take a look to tell you what the average temperatures are and all the other weather elements as well. So I'm starting off today's video with the average synoptic climatology. Typically, this time of year in the month of July, we have an expansive Bermuda high pressure system, subtropical high over the western Atlantic. Clockwise flow around this high pressure system in the northern hemisphere results in more of a southerly wind and south-southwest wind. And what that usually does is brings up warm, moist air mass, known as a maritime tropical air mass, into the southeast Virginia area along the east coast as well. And the most significant weather threat this time of year in July is a landfalling hurricane. Basically, this Bermuda high not only is responsible for giving us muggy, very humid weather, but also it is responsible for steering these tropical systems, these tropical storms and hurricanes around the periphery of this circulation. So that's what we really have to keep an eye on for the month of July here, is any threats of any tropical storms or hurricanes. Occasionally from the northwest, from this direction, you will have a weak frontal boundary that'll come down from the northwest and stall out in the vicinity of the Virginia-North Carolina border, which typically results in more of scattered showers and thunderstorms. Looking at the average tropical cyclone tracks in the month of July, the blue areas indicate likely areas for tropical development. You look at mainly the hot spots being the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and then the Western Atlantic Ocean. These arrows show the general tracks, the storm tracks if something were to develop. Again, notice this arrow here, how it bends, how it's bending more to the northwest than to the north and then to the northeast. And that again is because of the steering currents associated with this Bermuda subtropical high pressure system. That's the primary steering mechanism along the east coast here. So just something to keep an eye on as we head into the month of July. This image courtesy of NOAA. Now let's get a little bit closer to home and look at our average temperatures for the month of July, the average high and low here in the Virginia Beach, Hampton Road cities. Notice on July 1st the average high is 85 and the average low is 71. And you reach a maximum average high of 87 degrees on July 19th and a maximum average low of 73 degrees Fahrenheit toward the middle and end of the month. Now this dashed line above the numbers here and the July letters, that indicates what it actually feels like with combination of the hot temperatures and the higher humidity. This is your heat index values, your average heat index values. And notice this curve and how it peaks towards around the 19th of July, where the temperatures sometimes feel like 93 to 94 degrees. That's the average heat index and what it feels like each afternoon. And then we also have another dashed blue line with the humidity at night, but of course that's not as great heat index at nighttime without the sun. Looking now to turning to average cloud coverage. In general, we have 53% of the time, July 1st and July 11th, up to 56% of the time, we are situated in partly to mostly cloudy conditions. Most of the time it is a partly cloudy sky condition for the month of July. Occasionally you get those mostly cloudy conditions when you get the scattered thunderstorms, the stalled frontal boundaries in the vicinity, and then you would get more cloudy or overcast with approaching tropical systems up the east coast. But in general, 51 to 56% of the time, or rather 53% to 56% of the time, you have partly cloudy sky conditions across the area. Now, as far as probability of precipitation, in general, it's not that great, all that great this time of year in July, ranging from 38% July 1st up to 44% by month's end. Again, very scattered nature, very showery, convective type precipitation. This time of year, you're lacking those very well organized baroclinic cyclones, those mid-latitude low pressure systems. So you're not getting a very widespread type rain. Usually, again, just scattered convection and thunderstorms in the afternoon during the heating of the day. Looking at the average July precipitation, In general, we're ranging from 3.3 to 4.3 inches is the average monthly precip here in the Hampton Road cities. Generally, that shows it's not a super rainy month. Again, no real organized storm systems. This is mostly in the form of convective, showery type precipitation that starts and stops relatively quickly in association with thunderstorms. You get those thunderstorm downpours in the afternoon hours. Now, one thing I always like to talk about is the amount of daylight hours. All right, so we start the beginning of July at 14 hours and 39 minutes of daylight. And notice as the month goes on, we are slowly losing daylight time again. We're losing that daylight hours. Not a whole lot of a change, 39 minutes down to 3 minutes. So overall, the course of July, we're only losing 36 minutes of daylight. This is generally around the time where we peak in our amount of daylight each year. It's usually around 14 hours and 40 minutes for our particular latitude here in Southeast Virginia. Now the sunrise and sunset times kind of go in conjunction with the amount of daylight. This yellowish color indicates the daylight hours. So you see how wide it is initially as we get into July, but then it starts to slowly narrow. And as it slowly narrows, our sunset times get earlier by month's end, and the sunrise times get later. So we do lose, again, 36 minutes of daylight between the beginning of the month and the end of the month. Shortwave solar radiation, this is basically the radiation that is coming from the sun, and these units are in kilowatt hours. So starting on July 1st, the sun is very bright. If you've noticed outside this time of year, you're getting very intense solar radiation coming from the sun, and at 6.7 kilowatt hours to start the month, and then you slowly see this decline in the solar radiation all the way down to 6.1 kilowatt hours by July 31st. So there is starting to be a little bit of a slow decline in the amount of shortwave solar radiation hitting each area on the surface here of the Earth. It really starts dropping off more so into August, even down closer to 6 kilowatt hours actually, or slightly below that by the time we get into August. But for July, still a fairly strong sun angle, very high solar altitude, and fairly strong solar radiation. And just wanted to point out through these diagrams what's happening this time of year. The sun, if it were to be shining over in this direction, those June sun rays, even into July, these sun rays are way more direct. The solar altitude, highest point is generally over the Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degrees north latitude. Our hemisphere is tilted toward the sun during June, July, August. We're more pointed towards the sun, so that's why we're experiencing our summer season. Look at the difference in the way the rays are hitting the Earth's surface. If this was the ground, you have more direct solar radiation, more direct rays in summertime. If it's more direct rays, you notice that this is going to be a smaller surface area it's heating, and it's going to be more intense as compared to wintertime, where the solar radiation is more slanted at an angle because the sun is much lower in the sky. So this heat energy spreads out over a much larger area during the wintertime as compared to the more direct solar radiation during the summer months. Looking now at something that makes us feel very uncomfortable, and that would be the relative humidity. Look at July 1st, average relative humidity 69%, and that climbs 85% relative humidity by the month's end. So it's a very uncomfortable time. It's on that borderline between humid and muggy, what it feels like. Here's the criteria below. By the way, all these images and graphics are from WeatherSpark. Great website if you ever want to use that. I just wanted to put that out for WeatherSpark. So I certainly appreciate the ability to use these graphics in today's presentation. But getting back to what these numbers mean, all right, so we take into account dew points as well, down here at the bottom in degrees Fahrenheit. So the different shadings represent different colors. This also ties in with that relative humidity. So the higher than 70 degrees dew point is going to make it feel oppressive out there. Greater than 75, downright miserable. The average sea surface temperatures, this shows from June to July 1st, the average water temperatures offshore 75 degrees over the western Atlantic off the coast, and they climb up to about 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is generally our peak water temperatures here in the Virginia Beach area for the month of July. That's when we peak out for the water temperatures. All right, that wraps things up today on Spot On Weather. Just wanted to cover some general information, climatology. And what is climate? Climate is the weather that occurs over a longer period of time. It's the average weather, typically over a 30-year period. Thank you again to WeatherSpark for this data. We greatly do appreciate it. We certainly hope you enjoyed this presentation today. We wish everybody a happy 4th of July. And from Spot On Weather, remember, if we're not spot on, we're not doing it right. Have a great evening, everyone, and an even better 4th of July.